Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a Christmas card to share with you featuring the Frosty friends from Hello Bluebird. This set is an older one, but I really love the images, so I'm glad to be using it again. Now for today's card I did some prepping ahead. As you can see here, I already prepped a layout. I used the rectangle Extraordinaire Stencil from My Favorite Things as a guide because I wanted to have a white border around the edges of my panel. And I also wanted to have a frame behind that one, so I die cut a panel out of white cardstock, the Transotype perfect coloring paper that I used to color on, using the A2 rectangle frames from My Favorite Things. And I am not going to use the frame, so that one I'm keeping in the back of my pocket, but I will be using the inside, and that way I already have a lovely frame to go around my panel here. Now for this card I was inspired by the amazing Yana Smakula. She always creates these simple cards. Well, sometimes she makes these really intricate ones, but she really often makes these simple cards that look like effortless, but you know that tons of prepping went into it when it comes to the spacing of all of the items, and so I wanted to try it here to put as much of the images in this particular frame, stamp it out, and then just have some fun coloring. So this is a one layer card. I also think that you can easily just add some of the images with some dimension if you want to, but I am trying to keep it simple today, just with tons of images. So I thought that I liked the spacing that I already had, but then once I laid it out on top of my panel, I was still doubting, so I really went back and forth a few times to get it exactly how I wanted it to be before committing to it and stamping everything out. So I almost figured out how I really wanted to have everything. The lovely thing about a card like this is really that when you love how your card ended up and you keep everything into your MISTI, you can easily just stamp this same layout multiple times and just keep it in the back for whenever you still need some cards. It can be for Christmas, it can be for a birthday or any other occasion, but this way you really have something that already works. I don't really love recreating cards, as you know, but a way for me to maybe do this is just keep reusing other colors, so that I don't have the same card over and over, but just a slightly different card each time. So I stamped all of the images out using some black ink from My Favorite Things, the Extreme Black Ink. And then once I let it dry for a bit, I took my Copic markers to color everything in. Really easy. I am going to reuse colors, as I always love doing, to keep it as simple as possible. And I also decided to keep the frame on. I don't really know why, and then at a certain moment I removed the frame, and then I really wanted the frame again in place. So you do you. So here I'm starting with coloring. In case you want to revisit combinations, you can always go to my blog post where you have everything listed. So the reds, greens, yellows, orange colors, everything is over there. I also decided to keep the coloring really simple. You can of course do crazy shadowing, and it's really lovely, but I wanted to get some color on this card without making it too busy as well, because we already have tons of images and some lovely bubbles with some text in it. So therefore I kept it as simple as possible. For the snowman, I'm just using this one marker to give it a tiny bit of shadow, and that's really it for the snowman. So whenever I'm coloring, as you probably already know, I'm coloring from darkest to lightest marker. This is a way that works the best for me. But if you color from lightest to darkest, or you start with the base coat of your light marker and then build up from there, that's perfectly fine. You do you in the end. It's all about having fun and loving the end result. So that's the most important thing. The only thing that you really need to keep in mind is that whenever you color another way, that the end result can slightly differ from the one that I'm showing here, because just of the order in which you're coloring, but it will still be gorgeous, I'm sure of it, depending on how you color with it. So here, as you can see, I'm using the same greens all over. You can of course use several greens if you want to, but this is just how I love to color and create my cards, as simple as possible. I'm also going over my coloring. Most of the time I prefer having at least 2 layers to get the blend that I want, but if in case I need to, I can always add more. It most of the time depends on how big the images are, so in case I have a really small image, 2 layers are definitely enough. But for bigger images, from time to time, I use a 3rd layer or a 4th. Just keep in mind that whenever you're adding more layers, that you need to keep in mind that it might start bleeding. So it's not you that is going outside the lines, but the paper is just getting oversaturated so that the ink that you just added starts going out of the edges. And it's just not something that you want to. So if you add multiple layers and you think at a certain moment that the paper will not be able to handle it very well, just go over your panel with a heat gun or anything like that, or set it aside to dry, and then you can add more layers later on when the paper has sort of rested, and then you can just continue without having that issue. So for the shadowing, I did a bit whatever felt right. So for the tree, as you can see, I just added the darkest color on top and worked my way downwards. But for the snowman, the reindeer here, I'm trying to have the shadowing on the left side. I personally find that if you're able to keep the shadowing in the same area so that you really have a light source at a particular area on your panel, that it looks really good. But in case you're just doing like I did here, just whatever feels right, it's perfectly fine as well. In the end, we're making cards, so it will be cute and adorable. That's already being taken care of by the stamps, and then your coloring just will light everything up. So the shadowing, yes, you can decide upon one specific area to put your light source, but if not, then not, you know. So in this case, I just went for it and had some fun. Whenever I'm going outside the lines, I have a colorless blender, which is my most used marker in my whole collection, because I go outside of the lines quite a few times and I don't really like it whenever I do so. But is it time? Is it just because I'm going too quickly, or is it because it's just not my day when it comes to coloring? Anything really is possible, but the marker here, it helps you push back that color, which really for me is a lifesaver. It's also one of my first markers that I had. I remember starting with combinations of each color family of 2 markers, and then I had like a set of the warm grays and the colorless blender was in it. I had no clue that I needed it, but really without it, I don't think that I would have continued with the Copic coloring. So whenever I go slightly out of the lines, I just fix it with this marker. It can also help you if you create backgrounds or anything like that, or a snowman, and you want to have some shadows, but you don't want a harsh transition between the white area and then the color that you're adding. You can also go a bit over it with a colorless blender and let it fade into the white area more, so it can also help you in those cases. So here I'm onto the yellow combination. I already think it's the last one. And then just here a tiny bit of shadowing on the penguin. And that's really it. So because this card is really simple, I decided to add white jelly roll pen details, which is not something that I'm really familiar with. I don't do this often, but it's so adorable whenever I see it being done by other crafters, and the end results really are spectacular. So from time to time I try, and in this case, since I don't have any dimension on my card, I really wanted to try it as well. I added mostly on the darker areas of my coloring, which is not necessarily the logic area, but I just think that the white jumps out of it more whenever you add it to the darker areas. So that's a bit my reasoning behind where to add those details. And then I decided that I wanted to add some embellishments. Now you can go for really colorful embellishments, but I decided to go for white, so it's white on white. But I also think that, well, the panel you don't need to add any embellishments, but actually they were helping me to define that rectangle that I wanted to keep all of the images in. Sometimes you don't have an image right until or right up in the edges, so these embellishments really help me with that. Something else that you can do if you want to have colorful embellishments is look at the colors that you used to color everything in and get those colors back into your embellishments. But that's all up to you. So I'm using some liquid glue to help me get these embellishments in place. And then an embellishment wand, really a lifesaver as well when you're working with these tiny embellishments. So I'm just using that as well to get everything right on top of the glue. And then I just needed to figure out what I was going to do in the back of this panel. So I ended up using this Cranberry cardstock. It's from Concord and Lined. I was doubting between this one and the poppy red cardstock from Concord and Lined, and then I asked my husband which one he prefers. And so I'm still doubting whether I used the right one, but he's just more in love with this color overall than the poppy. That's a bit too bright for him. So that was his reasoning, not necessarily whether it was matching better or not with my panel, but well. So I'm just adding this white panel on top with a bit of foam tape. This way I do get a tiny bit of dimension, but you can also add it flat on top of your colorful background panel, or you can also use some pattern paper if you want to in the back to get a frame. That can also be really lovely. But I just did this. And if you want to, you can add glossy accents, you can add stickers, you can add anything you want. But this is my really simple card, inspired by Yana Smakula. I hope that you enjoyed this video and of course that you like the end result and that you got inspired to maybe try something yourself. I want to wish you all an incredible day and I'll be back soon with some new craft inspiration. Bye!